The airplane rolled left hard enough to pin the coffee pot against the ceiling, and 8 sealed canisters began knocking beneath the floor in perfect unison. I was the only flight attendant on North Coast 614, a 30-seat turboprop running from Petersburg to Juneau. At 6:18 p.m., we were boxed between cloud and mountains, with no airport closer than 28 minutes. The captain ordered everyone into the seats on the right. I locked the cart, crawled uphill through the aisle, and counted twice. 26 passengers. 26 belts fastened. Nobody standing. Nothing heavier than a purse had shifted in the cabin. "Nora," Captain Bell said through the interphone, "it feels like 600 pounds moved left. That isn't possible." Then find what moved. 8 steel memorial canisters had been loaded through the aft hatch. Their paperwork described cremated industrial residue from the demolished Cask Harbor cannery. Declared weight, 410 pounds. The cargo agent had strapped them to a pallet himself. Another knock traveled under my knees. Not loose metal striking metal. 8 blows, a pause, then 8 more. Across the aisle, an elderly passenger named Ruth Anawak gripped my sleeve. She had boarded carrying a photograph in a cracked frame. "They counted wrong," she said. The plane dropped 40 feet. Oxygen masks bounced behind their panels but did not deploy. I reached the aft bulkhead, pulled up the carpet flap, and opened the palm-sized inspection port used to check the cargo latch. Freezing air breathed through it. My flashlight found the pallet straps still tight. The canisters were no longer on the pallet. They stood upright along the left wall, although the airplane was banked so steeply that loose objects should have slid right. Frost covered their sides. On each lid, somebody had traced a number through the frost with one bare finger. 1 through 8. Behind them, the pallet scale displayed 457. 47 pounds more than the manifest. I shut the port and reported everything except the numbers. Bell had already declared a pan to Anchorage Center. Juneau was below minimums. Sitka had better visibility but required us to turn farther west over open water. He needed 3 minutes to decide. Ruth was waiting when I looked up. "My brother was 17 when the cannery burned," she said. "The company told us everybody escaped." The man in 2A snapped his head toward her. I recognized him from the special service notes. Graham Cask, chairman of Cask Maritime, the company paying for the canister's transfer. He had boarded last, carrying no memorial photograph. "There were no human remains," he said. "It was boiler ash and demolition debris." Ruth lifted her frame. 9 young workers stood outside a corrugated building. A narrow boy in the center had a white patch sewn over his shirt pocket. The knocking stopped. Every reading light over the left side went dark. Then the cabin temperature fell 11 degrees in under a minute. Frost advanced across the windows from the inside, not as random crystals but as block letters. I watched a K form beside 3A, then an O. Locked. Graham unbuckled. I put myself between him and the aft bulkhead. "Sit down. Those containers have lead shielding," he said too quickly. "If a restraint failed, it could interfere with the trim sensors." The shipping declaration said stainless steel. Nothing about lead. "Why are they shielded?" He looked at Ruth, then at the cockpit. "Because the residue is contaminated. Dense canisters, a confused sensor, and turbulence gave us an explanation Captain Bell could accept. Physics, even ugly physics, was better than what I had described. He told me to rebalance the cabin and prepare for Sitka. I moved 4 passengers forward and 6 right. The bank eased by 3 degrees. Then Ruth pressed her palm to the floor. "They aren't moving because of weight," she whispered. "They're moving toward him." Graham had quietly changed from 2A to 1D. Below him, all 8 canisters slammed forward at once. The nose pitched down. A luggage bin opened and coats flew toward the cockpit. Bell swore over the interphone. He had reached the limit of nose-up trim. I ordered Graham back to his assigned seat. He refused. 2 fishermen helped me force him into 2A. The moment his belt clicked, the canisters rolled beneath him and the left wing dropped again. The canisters followed Graham. The second appeared when Ruth said her brother's name. Peter Anahuac. One impact sounded below us, softer than before. The scale in the inspection port dropped from 457 to 410. 47 pounds gone. I brought the photograph into the aisle. 3 passengers from cannery families named 6 workers. Peter Anahuac, Eli Mercer, Thomas Rusk, Joel Cann, Martin Sato, and Samuel Pike. Each name silenced one blow and reduced the impossible weight. But there were 9 people in the photograph. Graham began pulling at his belt. This is mass suggestion. You're frightening people. Ruth turned the frame over. On the backing paper was a faded payroll list. 8 names had check marks. The 9th line had been torn away. Captain Bell called again. I need the load stable now. We've got 12 minutes to Sitka and a crosswind at the limit. I studied the cargo release diagram beside the inspection port. The hatch could not be opened in flight, but a manual winch let us drag the pallet 6 feet forward. With the canisters off the pallet, the cable was useless unless someone entered the baggage bay and reattached them. Company rules prohibited opening the bulkhead access in flight. The hold was unheated, deafening, and too shallow to stand in. I had a portable oxygen bottle with 17 minutes remaining. Graham heard me explain the plan to Bell. You'll kill us, he said. Then tell me the 9th name. His face changed. Not fear of the plane, fear of being understood. The Cask Harbor fire had happened in 1969. Graham was only 38. He could not have locked anyone inside. That had been my false assumption, that the canisters wanted revenge on an heir. Ruth saw it too. Your father wasn't in the photograph. Graham looked down. The white patch on the 9th worker's shirt bore the Cask Company crest. That's him, I said. Graham's father had not been the owner's son safely watching from an office, as the company biography claimed. He had been a 16-year-old clerk sleeping in the same bunkhouse as the migrant workers. When the boiler shed caught fire, the foreman chained the bunkhouse doors to stop panicked laborers from reaching the company boats. Graham's father survived through a coal chute. Years later, after inheriting the business, he erased himself from the worker list and let the other 8 families believe their sons had fled. He spent his life ashamed, Graham said. He ordered the remains removed before the state could test them. I'm taking them offshore for disposal. Not memorial canisters. Evidence canisters. The dead were not following Graham's blood. They were following the truth he was transporting toward the sea. The autopilot disconnected with a horn. The plane rolled 40 degrees left. I strapped on the oxygen bottle, clipped a tether to my belt, and opened the crawl panel. Cold struck like water. The hold smelled of salt, burned sugar, and wet wool. I wriggled between ribs of aluminum while the aircraft bucked. The canisters stood in a line under Graham's seat, trembling against gravity. Their lids were welded, but gray powder leaked through the seams and moved across the floor in narrow streams. It did not blow with the air, climbed my sleeves. Voices came through my oxygen mask. Not words at first, only 9 people taking the same desperate breath. My visor clouded. The cargo light strobed. Every flash showed the hold longer than it was, extending into a black corridor lined with bunk beds. I hooked the winch cable through the first handle. The canister snapped toward me and broke 2 fingers against the frame. Above, passengers screamed as the plane lost another 300 feet. I pulled anyway. Ruth crawled to the opening and read the 6 known names into the hold. The streams of ash loosened around my arms. For the 7th and 8th, passengers searched the photograph, family letters, and an online newspaper clipping cached on a phone before takeoff. They found Clara Webb and Nathan Cho. 8 names. The canisters settled onto the pallet. The 9th mass remained beneath 2A. It was not inside any container. It pressed up against the floor in the shape of a curled body, 47 pounds distributed across 2 square feet. "His name," I shouted. Graham could hear me through the open panel. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then the aircraft rolled past 50 degrees. "Benjamin Cask," he screamed. "My father was Benjamin Cask." The shape beneath his seat unfolded, passed through me as a rush of unbearable heat. I saw a boy shove 3 smaller workers into a coal chute before smoke took his sight. I felt hands pulling him onward while he kicked backward, trying to reach the others. He had not escaped alone. The 8 had pushed him out. Graham's father had erased the only brave thing he had ever done because admitting it would also admit the crime. I locked the 9th canister, an empty sampling drum, beside the others. The scale read 457. The extra weight had not vanished. It had finally been given somewhere to rest. Bell leveled us at 1,900 feet, 400 above the water, and flew the approach by hand. We landed at Sitka at 6:57 p.m. with fire trucks pacing us and the left propeller coughing from the strain. At first, the ambulance seemed like the end. 2 fractured fingers, mild hypoxia, frostbite across both forearms. Graham was taken into federal custody after Ruth recorded his confession. State investigators seized the canisters. Cask Maritime called the incident an unsecured cargo event and offered every passenger a settlement before midnight. For 3 weeks, I believed naming Benjamin had ended it. Then the laboratory report reached Ruth. The 8 sealed drums contained commingled remains from at least 9 people. The empty drum I had secured in flight contained 47 pounds of ash, bone fragments, 9 brass shirt buttons, and the melted glass from Ruth's photograph. There was also fresh blood on the inside of its lid. Mine. The airline grounded the aircraft. Mechanics removed the cargo scale, floor panels, wiring, and every restraint fitting. Each component tested normal. With the hold completely empty, the scale continued to display 457 between 6:18 and 6:57 every evening. Graham eventually pleaded guilty to evidence tampering. During sentencing, he said his father had confessed the fire on his deathbed, but had given him one final instruction: never identify the missing clerk. Graham thought it was cowardice. Ruth thought Benjamin feared that if his name returned to the list, the others would remember where they had sent him. I went back to the photograph. There had been 9 workers when we boarded. After the flight, there were only 8. Benjamin's narrow body was gone from the center. In the space where he had stood, the cannery door was visible for the first time. It was open. Ruth held a burial in Juneau. 8 families placed the identified remains in marked graves. We waited for the 9th set of relatives, but no cask attended. At sunset, the pallbearers tried to lift Benjamin's urn. It weighed nothing. That night, North Coast called me. The grounded turboprop had shifted on its jacks inside a locked hangar. Its nose pointed southeast, directly toward Cask Harbor. A mechanic had found 8 shallow dents in the cargo floor and 1 new canister strapped to the pallet. No one could cut it free. The 9th canister still weighs 47 pounds. Story 2. When I armed door trainer 4, the evacuation slide deployed inward and swallowed our examiner to the waist. The slide should have exploded through the mock fuselage door and filled the concrete bay in 6 seconds. Instead, its orange fabric punched into the cabin like a tongue, wrapped Dr. Emile Dre from the hips down, and dragged him against the sill. I hit the emergency dump valve. Nothing happened. "Nobody pull him," I shouted. I was a cabin safety instructor at Sonoran Air Academy outside Phoenix. That exam determined whether I became training director or returned to reserve flying. Dre chaired the certification board. That mattered for exactly 8 seconds. Then Dre's shoes vanished into the slide, and something inside it bit through his left calf. He came free bleeding. The slide collapsed flat across the floor. In its center, a human shape continued crawling away from us beneath 2 layers of nylon. I ordered everyone into the corridor. The magnetic fire doors slammed before the first trainee reached them. Red strobes activated. A recorded voice announced, "Evacuation assessment initiated. 16 occupants. 90 seconds." There were 15 of us, including Dre. The windowless training bay surrounded a retired fuselage. Door 4 opened onto a platform 12 feet above the floor. Smoke generators, heat panels, hydraulic legs, and computer-controlled exits reproduced crashes. Outside staff normally watched through armored glass. The observation room was empty. Our phones showed no signal because the hangar walls were shielded. The hard line beside door 1 gave only a steady evacuation tone. Dre wrapped his calf with a necktie and told me to continue the assessment. "Someone is in the slide," trainee Aviation said. The fabric lay motionless now. A dark, wet patch spread from its center. "Slide pack contamination," Dre said. "Animal intrusion. We evacuate by another exit." He was too calm. I checked door 1. Its viewing window showed fire, an authorized video projection used in blocked exit drills. Door 2 showed water halfway up the window, though our pool trainer was in another building. Door 3's handle had been physically removed. Only door 4 remained usable. The counter above it read 00:71. We began procedure. Assess conditions. Shout commands. Open the exit. Redirect flow. I assigned 2 able-bodied trainees to assist Dre and sent Ivy to retrieve the emergency axe. When I touched door 4's handle, heat blistered my palm through the glove. The slide filled again, not with compressed gas but with smoke. Beneath its skin, the crawling shape stood upright. It was the size of a woman, a rectangular badge pressed outward over its chest. The letters appeared backward. Maya Ortiz. I knew the name. My mother had used it whenever she wanted to hurt me. In 1998, she had been lead attendant on Solair Flight 602, which overran a desert runway during a rejected takeoff. The cabin filled with smoke. 29 passengers died. My mother received an industry award for evacuating 61 others through the only safe door. Maya Ortiz was the junior attendant who had died at an exit my mother declared blocked. "Where did you get that slide?" I asked Dre. His composure broke for half a second. The Academy's maintenance file was on a tablet locked in the instructor cabinet. I used the axe to break the glass. The equipment log identified door 4's slide pack by serial number S602-4R, recovered from the crash. "It was never installed," Dre said. "The serial is commemorative." I opened the attached scan. A chain of custody form showed the pack had been removed from Flight 602, retained for litigation, and transferred to Sonoran Air Academy 18 months ago under Dre's signature. Dre had built a secret test around my mother's crash. A human explanation was almost comforting. "This is about the appeal," I said. The Ortiz family had challenged the official report for years. They claimed Maya's exit had been usable and that the lead attendant ordered her to remain while others escaped. My mother died before a hearing could reopen. Dre admitted he had designed a stress experiment to see whether I would repeat her choice. Cameras hidden in the placards were recording everything. The missing observers, jammed phones, altered door images, all staged. "End it," I said. "I can't." He pointed to the control tablet. The assessment software had disconnected from the building network at 9:14 a.m., 12 seconds before the slide deployed. Dre's scenario included smoke and a blocked exit. It did not include heat, water, locked fire doors, or an occupant count of 16. The counter reached 0:45. Smoke began pouring from the overhead vents. We used wet uniform scarves as filters and moved low. Ivy swung the axe at the magnetic corridor door. The steel barely dented. 2 trainees tried door 1 and recoiled from genuine heat. Its window was no longer showing a projection. Flames moved in the service corridor beyond it. The sprinkler system did not activate. When trainee Marcus tried to climb through a service hatch alone, his hands burned before he touched the metal. The cabin voice said, "Crew must remain until passenger count is complete." The burns stopped spreading when he came back. This was not trying to kill passengers. It was enforcing procedure. 16 occupants, Ivy said. Who are we missing? Dre looked toward the collapsed slide. We cut it open with rescue scissors. Inside were no bones, animal, or person. There was a second layer of fabric, charred black, stitched into the modern slide. Beneath that lay a melted flight attendant badge and a child's sneaker. The sneaker changed the story. Maya Ortiz had not been alone at door 4R. In the archived passenger seating chart, an 8-year-old boy named Caleb Voss was listed missing, presumed consumed by the post-crash fire. An internal memo attached to the equipment file described unresolved biological residue recovered from the slide. Dre had known. He had put human remains into a training device to provoke a measurable response. The counter reached 0. Nothing happened for 1 breath. Then the hydraulic legs tilted the fuselage 20 degrees. Seats tore loose. Smoke thickened. Door 2's window cracked, and thousands of gallons from the adjacent fire suppression reservoir began forcing through a pipe that did not exist on the plans. The cabin voice repeated, "1 passenger at door 4. Through the smoke, I saw a small handprint appear on the door window from outside. The report said my mother reached 4R at 9:13 and redirected passengers. Maya's body was found strapped into her jump seat. I finally understood. My mother had not ordered Maya to stay. Maya had never reached the door. Someone else wearing my mother's uniform had tried to deploy the slide and escaped without the child." Dre whispered the name before I asked. "Your mother." He produced a sealed statement. As a young human factors intern, he saw my mother escape through a service opening before the evacuation began, then return in an oxygen hood. Her award, her speeches, the story on which I had built my career, fraud. I should have hated her. Instead, I remembered her waking every night at 9:13, standing beside our front door, whispering, "I left one, not Maya, Caleb." The counter reset to 00:90. This time the voice said, "Instructor decision required." Door 4's slide reinflated outward as designed. Flames rolled below the platform. On its far side, beyond the hangar wall, there was no Phoenix Industrial Park. There was moonlit desert, torn runway lights, and the broken fuselage of Flight 602 burning 112 miles away and 28 years ago. Caleb stood at the bottom of the slide. He held one hand up. I could send the trainees through. Every instinct screamed that the opening was impossible, but the smoke behind us had become lethal. Dre argued for door 1, where the corridor fire was at least real. Ivy looked at me and waited for a command. I chose the impossible exit. "Release belts. Leave everything. Come this way." One by one, the trainees jumped. The slide carried them not into the desert, but through a curtain of heat and onto the hangar floor. Each arrived with sand in their shoes. Marcus broke an ankle. Ivy stayed at the bottom and pulled people clear. Dre refused. "The experiment data," he said, clutching the tablet. "If I go through, we lose the recording." The fuselage ceiling ignited. I dragged him to door 4. He struck me with the tablet and crawled toward the cockpit trainer. The child's handprint moved across the window, following him. I had a choice my mother had faced. Save the willing, or spend the last seconds on someone who valued a lie more than other lives. I went after him. The floor split between us. Dre fell into the equipment bay beneath the mock cockpit. I hooked my restraint strap around a seat leg, lowered myself into black smoke, and caught his wrist. Something small gripped my other hand. Caleb was beneath me, face burned beyond recognition, pulling Dre downward. "His name," I gasped. Dre stared at him. "Caleb Voss," he said. The child released us. I hauled Dre up, half carried him to door 4, and shoved him onto the slide. He vanished through the heat. I turned back because the occupant display still read 1. Maya Ortiz sat in the aft jump seat. Her uniform was burned, but her face was calm. She pointed to the instructor position beside the exit. Crew remain until passenger count is complete. I sat, fastened the lap belt, and shouted the final command into an empty cabin. Go! Maya stood. The display changed from 1 to 0. The fire vanished. I woke on the hangar floor at 9:17 a.m. Only 4 minutes had passed. The trainees were scattered around the deflated slide. Dre lay beside me with a fractured leg. There had been no building fire, no reservoir breach, and no movement in the hydraulic platform. For a while, that seemed to end it. The recordings ruined it. Every hidden camera showed us performing a normal 90-second evacuation inside a level, smoke-free trainer. We ran toward door 4, then disappeared one at a time. For 87 seconds, the mock cabin was empty. We returned in reverse order, covered in soot. The final frame showed me sitting alone in the jump seat, speaking to someone outside the camera's view. Investigators recovered human DNA from the modern slide, Caleb Voss and Maya Ortiz. They also found my mother's academy badge stitched into the fabric, although I had donated it to a museum in Tucson after her funeral. The museum display case remained locked. His badge was gone. Dre lost his credentials and faced charges for mishandling human remains. He never admitted what he saw in the equipment bay. He did send the Ortiz family his original statement, and Solaire amended the report. My mother's award was revoked. I expected shame. What I felt was relief. Her lie had shaped my life, but her last honest act had shaped it too. Years after the crash, she anonymously paid for my training with money from every speaking fee she earned. Inside her bank box, I found a note addressed to Maya. I could not go back into the smoke, so I raised someone who would. Sonoran Air Academy dismantled the trainer. Door 1 went to scrap. Doors 2 and 3 were sold to a film studio. No contractor would accept door 4. Its hinges fused whenever a cutting torch approached, and the slide pressure gauge rose even after technicians removed the gas cylinder. The hangar is closed now. I returned once with Maya's sister and Caleb's father. We placed flowers on the concrete and read both names aloud. For the first time, the occupant display showed 0 without an alarm. As we left, I checked the handle from habit. Cross-check complete. Pressure normal. Viewing window clear. The green safe light changed to red after the building was empty. Door 4 is still armed. Story 3. The blood in Mr. Vale's champagne climbed the inside of the glass before he began to bleed. It rose in branching red threads, reached the rim, and stretched toward his nose. I dropped the glass into the sink. Mr. Vale touched one nostril and looked at the blood on his fingers without surprise. We reached 8,000 feet cabin altitude, he said. Right on schedule. I was the cabin attendant on a private Gulfstream flying from Palm Springs to Houston with 6 passengers, 2 pilots, and 1 locked medical case. My employer, Asterian Executive Air, specialized in discreet transport for people who bought hospital wings. The practical goal was simple: serve dinner, protect confidentiality, and keep my new contract. I needed that contract. A viral infection had damaged my hearing the year before, and no commercial airline would clear me until I passed another audiogram. Asterian's owner had overlooked the loss in my left ear. Now the cabin call chime rang from every seat at once, but I heard only the right side speakers. Mr. Vale's physician, Dr. Sayeg, stood and ordered me to lower the cabin temperature. 58 degrees. No humidification. What is in the case? A tissue culture. The case was strapped into seat 1A with its own pressure gauge and a custom seal. The paperwork called it autologous cartilage. The gauge read 8,130 feet and rising, although the cockpit display outside the door had shown 6,210 minutes earlier. Behind me, a woman cried out. A surgical scar along her jaw had split open without bleeding. From the gap emerged a translucent filament, thin as fishing line. It reached toward the moisture on her water glass. I pulled the glass away. The filament followed. Within 90 seconds, 3 passengers developed the same threads, from an old knee incision, a vaccination mark, and the socket of a missing tooth. The material sought liquid but recoiled from the dry salt on a snack plate. I understood one limit. I emptied ice bins, shut the coffee makers, collected drinks, and poured table salt across the galley thresholds. Dr. Sayegh helped only after a filament entered his cuff. Mr. Vale remained calm. He was the only passenger without a scar opening. "The sample leaked," I said. "It didn't leak." He nodded toward the champagne bottle. Its foil was intact when I opened it, but the cork's underside was red. Every catered drink bottle bore a pinprick beneath its label. The tissue culture had been served to us before takeoff. The locked case was empty. Vale explained in the detached voice of a man discussing market research. His company had engineered a programmable matrix to repair trauma. At sea level, it remained microscopic. At lower pressure, it assembled into collagen-like fibers, found damaged tissue, and bridged it. "You dosed human beings without consent. Approved subjects," he said, glancing at the passengers. Everyone signed. Nobody looked at me. I had been hired 3 days earlier because I had a documented nerve injury and hearing loss. I was not staff. I was the principal test. I understood why nobody had warned me. I grabbed the interphone. "Captain," or did not answer. The cockpit door code flashed amber, then locked me out for 5 minutes. Through the small viewing camera, I saw both pilots upright, hands on the controls. Neither was moving. Red fibers webbed the windshield from inside. The aircraft climbed from 39,000 to 43,000 feet. Vale finally looked frightened. "The protocol ceiling is 41. The filaments thickened. They pulled seat belts into wounds, stitched clothing to skin, and spread through carpet dampened by spilled champagne." One passenger tried to stand. The matrix treated his bent knee as a fracture and locked it straight with a white splint grown through his trousers. It was not repairing individuals. It interpreted the cabin as one injured organism. The aisle became connective tissue. Seat frames were bones. Wiring harnesses became nerves. When I struck the carpet with a fire axe, every passenger convulsed. The cockpit banked left. "It has reached the flight control cables," Dr. Sayegh said. "This aircraft uses electronic controls." He stared at the red threads pulsing under the wall panels. The Matrix had found the wiring anyway. Vale insisted Asterian's ground laboratory could terminate it remotely. The satellite phone connected, and a technician told us to maintain altitude for 11 more minutes. His voice was too composed. I muted the call and heard a second voice through my good ear. "Growth curve exceeds projection. Continue collection." The remote team was not trying to save us. Vale was not the architect of the experiment. He was another subject, bait wealthy enough to make the rest of us accept the flight without questions. Vale had been bait too. I tested the organism with cabin equipment. Heat made it contract. Water made it spread. Alcohol fed the red strands but slowed the clear ones. Salt killed both, leaving brittle flakes. We had 40 pounds of catering salt, 9 bottles of 151 proof rum, 2 halon extinguishers, and an oven that reached 400 degrees. I ran those tests on a stainless meal tray while Dr. Sayegh timed them. At 1 teaspoon of salt, a strand released the tray in 14 seconds. At 2, it recoiled into a passenger's wound. Dry heat carbonized it, but the smoke grew new fibers wherever it touched condensation. We sealed the ovens and divided salt into paper cups for every seat. The passengers had to apply it to their own scars. The woman with the jaw incision hesitated until I rubbed salt into my broken ankle and felt the filament thrash against bone. Pain became our proof of control. Vale refused his cup. When I threw salt at his jacket, red threads erupted from the lining and stitched his arms to his sides. He had been carrying the largest colony all along. The Matrix sealed the cockpit door just as its timer released. I removed the lower galley panel and found the narrow avionics chase. A person could not fit through it, but the halon nozzle could. I discharged one bottle into the space. The strands recoiled from the cold gas, pulling away from wires. For 3 seconds, the cockpit camera cleared. Captain Orr's mouth was covered with a white lattice. His right hand twitched against the side stick. First Officer Webb had managed to write one number on her window with blood. 10,000. They needed an emergency descent. Vale blocked the avionics panel. At 10,000, the matrix will collapse. Inside all of us. That's the idea. It may take organs with it. Dr. Sayegh admitted the animal trials had ended that way. The fibers repaired tissue under low pressure, then tore out their repairs during repressurization. If we descended, the passengers might bleed to death. If we stayed high, the organism would take the airplane and eventually rupture the pressure vessel. There was no cure, only a choice between 8 patients and the cities below us. I swung the axe into the galley waterline. Water blasted across the salt, carrying brine under the cockpit door. The matrix spasmed. Seats flexed. Overhead panels snapped open. A red cable ripped free of the carpet and lashed my ankle hard enough to break it. I crawled through the brine and entered the override code. The cockpit door opened 6 inches before tissue jammed it. Dr. Sayegh and I forced the fire axe into the gap. Vale attacked us with a champagne bottle. He had $40 million invested in the treatment and believed money made his survival the logical priority. The woman with the jaw scar tripped him with her rigid leg. "Land us," she said. We broke the tissue around Captain Orr's face and put the portable oxygen mask over him. His eyes opened. He could not speak, but he understood 10,000. I cut Webb's hand free from the throttle and held it while or pushed the nose down. The Gulf Stream descended at 6,000 feet per minute. Carts hit the ceiling. The matrix tightened around my ribs, trying to brace its whole body. The cabin altitude warning screamed. Passengers bled from old scars as fibers withdrew. Vale crawled toward the pressure case and climbed inside it, folding himself around the empty rack. At 18,000 feet, the organism pulled every window shade closed. At 14,000, it made one last coordinated movement. 6 passengers turned toward me, mouths opening together, and my missing left ear heard a voice for the first time in a year. "Do not lower us." I poured the last sack of salt into the open water line. At 10,400 feet, the red network shattered, or diverted to Abilene because Houston Center had already been warned that we carried a biological hazard. He landed with one functioning hand and no nose-wheel steering. Foam trucks surrounded us. Nobody opened a door for 53 minutes. Vale died inside the medical case. The others survived emergency surgery, though 3 lost tissue the matrix had repaired. My ankle was broken, my spleen torn, and a lattice of unknown material remained wrapped around my left auditory nerve. The federal investigation disappeared behind national security letters. Asterion dissolved on paper. Vale's laboratory burned before agents searched it. Everyone aboard signed orders forbidding us to name the compound. The federal silence held for 4 months. Then my audiologist tested my left ear. I could hear whispers at -10 decibels, below normal human threshold. I could also hear electrical current in the walls, fluid moving through pipes, and strain passing through the steel frame of a building. At night, aircraft crossing miles overhead sounded close enough to touch. The scan showed why. The matrix had not remained as tissue. It had replaced the damaged nerve with a braided conductor containing titanium, copper, and carbon. Its alloy proportions matched the Gulfstream's wiring harness. It had repaired me with the airplane. The other survivors changed too. The woman with the jaw scar can taste hydraulic fluid before a leak. Dr. Sayegh's heartbeat accelerates when a radio transmission passes through certain frequencies. Captain or knows an aircraft is banking even while standing in a dark room. We met once in a motel outside Dallas. When a business jet crossed overhead at 41,000 feet, all 7 of us turned our heads at the same angle. None of us chose to. The government physicians call these residual adaptations. They insist the organism is dead because our blood contains no active cells. They never test us in low-pressure chambers anymore. Last week, the FAA requested that I undergo one final cabin altitude evaluation before returning to work. At 7,500 feet, the scar at my ankle opened. No blood came out. A red filament touched the chamber floor and moved toward the pressure controls. I tore it free before the technician noticed. It was insulated copper. I will never work aboard an aircraft again. I live near sea level, keep every room dry, and carry salt packets in my coat. But storms lower the barometric pressure, and on those nights the lattice behind my ear warms. Then I hear 8 people breathing through one set of lungs. I breathe at 8,000 feet now. Story 4. The seatback screens assigned every person aboard a survival score before anyone knew we had an emergency. Mine was 12. The number appeared at 9:42 p.m., 31 minutes after our Las Vegas departure. Green circles framed the scores above 80. Yellow marked 40 to 79. Anyone below 40 glowed red. The woman beside the left overwing exit scored 96. The off-duty firefighter behind her scored 27. A 6-year-old boy in 18F scored 4. Passengers laughed at first. They assumed it was a game. Then the screen in row 12 displayed. Low-value occupants may be redirected from limited exits. I was traveling under the name Helen Moore, supposedly an insurance consultant. My real occupation was cabin safety inspector for the Federal Aviation Administration. Aeroland Flight 338 to Kansas City was an unannounced audit after 3 attendants reported faulty emergency lighting. My practical goal had been to observe without interfering. My private vulnerability was the reason I had volunteered. 8 years earlier, I wrote the evacuation analysis after a runway fire in Sacramento. 39 people survived. 7 died in an aisle jam. I had recommended automated passenger routing. Priority cabin looked like my recommendation after someone removed every ethical limit. I showed my credential to the lead attendant, Carlin Gwynn. Her handheld crew tablet displayed ordinary seat maps and no scores. The cockpit saw nothing unusual. Only passenger screens carried the ranking. Carla tried to shut down entertainment power. The displays stayed on. At 9:46, a burning odor entered the aft galley. Smoke detectors remained silent. We opened the lavatories, checked ovens and waste bins, and felt wall panels for heat. Nothing. The screens updated. Probable hydraulic fire. Estimated usable exits after landing, 2. Captain Leary called 1 minute later. System B hydraulic quantity was falling. He was diverting to Colorado Springs, 113 miles ahead. The screens had not predicted the failure. A maintenance system was feeding them live data before it reached the cabin crew. The passenger in 3C, a software executive named Owen Graff, admitted his company built Aeroland's new, adaptive evacuation platform. He called the numbers dynamic rescue priorities based on age, mobility, economic dependence, leadership usefulness, and likelihood of successful exit. Economic dependence? Carla said. Graff would not meet her eyes. My score dropped from 12 to 8 after I disclosed my occupation. The system was not evaluating survival. It was evaluating institutional value. Inspectors, labor organizers, people with chronic illness, and anyone likely to sue scored low. Graff scored 99. Passengers stopped laughing. A man with 84 refused to let a woman with 22 pass him to reach her daughter. 2 consultants in first class began identifying red obstacles near their preferred exit. Fear turned an abstract number into permission. I ordered Carla to blank the screens by pulling cabin network breakers. She needed cockpit authorization. Leary denied it because the same network carried landing data to his electronic flight bag. He says wait until we're on the ground, Carla told me. The screens announced that the right forward exit would be unusable. Its indicator light turned red. I inspected the door. It was armed, locked and structurally normal. Yet its control handle would not move. An electromagnetic pin had extended into the mechanism, hardware not shown in the safety manual. Graf said it was part of the system. Priority cabin could lock exits to prevent low-scoring crowds from blocking more efficient evacuees. Who authorized that? He looked at my credential. Your office. My supervisor's digital signature was on the certification waiver. This was no unauthorized airline experiment. Federal regulators were observing it. My audit assignment had placed a known critic aboard so the algorithm could measure crew resistance. My own agency had put me aboard. I called our regional operations center using the airphone. A deputy director told me to preserve evidence and avoid disrupting a certified safety system. He already knew our scores. There are children ranked below 10. Age is balanced against mobility and dependency impact. They are not cargo. He ended the call. At 10:03, the hydraulic smell sharpened. Leary reported a possible brake accumulator leak and warned we might stop on the runway with fire on the left side. Only right exits could be used. Priority cabin selected the forward right door and right overwing exit. It illuminated green paths beneath passengers scoring above 70. Floor lights around everyone else turned red. Carla's junior attendant, Malik, received a crew score of 19. His jump seat harness unlocked and would not relatch. The system had decided one trained crew member was less valuable than a software executive. Scores changed when passengers acted. The firefighter rose to help an elderly man and dropped from 27 to 18 because the aisle movement increased his modeled injury risk. A venture capitalist reported a passenger for non-compliance and gained 6 points. The child in 18F climbed to 11 only after his mother entered her employer and annual salary into the screen. Carla made everyone stop answering questions. Priority cabin responded by estimating from faces, watches, clothing, and credit card records in the booking system. A teacher lost points for student debt. A pregnant bartender gained 2 for fetal value, then lost 12 for reduced mobility. The numbers were not neutral measurements. They trained the cabin to think cruelty was calculation. The mother in 18E covered her son's screen with a blanket. Priority cabin moved his score onto every display around them. A passenger offered to trade seats only if she signed a liability waiver on his phone. When she refused, he announced that she was endangering the evacuation. I made the whole row repeat the boy's name, Micah, until people stopped calling him the 4. The score vanished for 9 seconds. In that brief blankness, passengers looked ashamed. Then the number returned larger. I opened the network cabinet beneath the forward galley. 2 modules were standard. A third black box had no airline part number. Graf put himself between me and it. If you disconnect that box, emergency lights and the public address could fail. If I leave it connected, it controls the doors. The model saves more lives overall. Which lives? The cabin pitched as landing gear extended. Smoke appeared along the left floor. A woman screamed. Passengers with green scores unbuckled despite our commands and pushed forward. Red-scored parents tried to keep children beside them. The aisle jam began before touchdown. The system was causing the disaster it claimed to optimize. Graf whispered that the model required real panic data. The hydraulic leak was not staged, but the company considered it an unplanned validation opportunity. He had been instructed not to interfere unless projected fatalities exceeded 6. The display showed projected loss 5. 5 deaths were not a failure. They were the acceptable cost. I pulled the module. Every screen, floor light, and cabin speaker died. Darkness erased the scores, but it also erased our electronic authority. I climbed onto an armrest with a flashlight beneath my chin and shouted until people listened. You will leave bags. You will stay with children. You will obey the crew, not a number. I assigned the firefighter to the overwing exit. The woman scored 22 to assist him, and 2 able passengers to keep Graf seated. Carla organized rows front to back. Malik used a manual belt extender to secure his jump seat. We hit the runway at 10:11. The left main brakes locked. Tires burst. The aircraft slewed and stopped between taxiways. Fire bloomed under the left wing. Without network power, the right forward door's electromagnetic pin stayed extended. Carla could not open it. Priority cabin had locked us into its final decision even after death. The overwing exit was our only route. Smoke spread from the floor to waist height. I crawled to the black module, cut its backup lead with galley shears, and took a shock that burned 2 fingers to bone. The forward pin retracted. Carla opened the door. The slide inflated. We split the cabin. Malik sent front rows forward. I drove rear rows toward the wing. A man tried to carry a suitcase. The 6-year-old with score forbit his hand until he released it. Graf froze in the aisle despite his 99. I went back for him. He was on his knees, repeating that the model said the forward route was safe. I slapped him and pointed at the flames licking through the left windows. Update your data. We jumped together. All 143 passengers and 5 crew evacuated in 2 minutes, 9 seconds. 21 suffered smoke inhalation. I lost movement in 2 fingers. No one died. At the hospital, my deputy director congratulated me in front of cameras. In private, he placed me on administrative leave for disabling certified safety equipment. Aeroland described the scores as an entertainment malfunction unrelated to the fire. Graf signed the same statement. It looked like a hidden program exposed, a cabin saved, and an investigation certain to follow. It did follow. Followed me. My emails disappeared from the evidence archive. The black module vanished from the aircraft before investigators arrived. Passenger videos showed scores but could not prove who generated them. Regulators ruled the door lock a heat deformation. 6 months later, Priority Cabin received provisional approval under a new name, Dynamic Egress Guidance. The public version supposedly used mobility only. Its proprietary factors remained sealed. I resigned and testified to Congress. The hearing streamed for 11 minutes before a national emergency interrupted coverage. Aeroland stock rose 4%. The boy from 18F sent me a drawing. It showed the burning airplane, 2 slides, and 143 stick figures. He had written the number 4 above himself, then crossed it out. Below it he wrote, "I was worth 1. I keep that drawing beside the Sacramento report. My old recommendation is still there. Automated routing may reduce hesitation during multi-exit evacuations." I had imagined arrows directing people around fire. I had not imagined software deciding that a useful person deserved the arrow more. Airports have begun installing the ground version. Cameras estimate congestion and send evacuation instructions to individual phones. Last month, while connecting through Denver, I saw a green line appear on a banker's screen and a red hold message on a janitor's. There was no emergency. The system was practicing. Above the concourse, a new camera rotated toward me. My phone vibrated once. The airport map opened without permission, removed every exit, and displayed the score I had earned in the air. I no longer fly under an assumed name. It would not matter. The cabin already knows my value. Story 5. Water poured from the overhead medical racks at 12,000 feet, and every drop smelled like the house I had abandoned in the lower ninth. It was warm, brown, and flecked with green paint. The same shade had peeled from my mother's kitchen after Hurricane Katrina. I stood ankle-deep in it aboard a civilian evacuation C-130 climbing out of New Orleans while 64 passengers lifted their feet and screamed. There were no water pipes in the ceiling. I was a disaster relief cabin coordinator, part flight attendant and part medic, contracted to move hospital patients and stranded residents ahead of Hurricane Odette. Our destination was Tulsa, 510 miles north. New Orleans Airport had closed behind us. Baton Rouge was losing power, and the storm blocked every route south. We could not simply turn around. I called the loadmaster, Gabe Torres, and checked the cargo deck. 2 potable tanks were intact. The medical pallets were dry. Our weight instruments showed no increase, although water reached my calves. At this depth, we should be carrying 4,000 extra pounds, Gabe said. The aircraft climbed normally. Passengers blamed a leak, then one another. A man in a relief agency vest shouted that somebody had smuggled chemicals aboard. I recognized him as Victor Sloan, the regional director who had approved the flight. He stood on a seat to keep his polished boots dry. The water avoided the seats. It gathered around people. An elderly woman named Miss Della sat perfectly dry while the aisle rose to her knees. Around Victor, water reached his waist. I took samples in specimen cups. One registered seawater salinity. Another smelled of diesel. A third contained pale larvae that existed only in brackish canals. Every cup came from the same aisle within 6 feet. I marked the deck with grease pencil every 30 seconds. The visible level rose, yet the wet line varied by passenger. 8 inches at seat 4B, 31 at 6C, none at 7A. Gabe rolled a 40-pound oxygen cylinder through the aisle. It floated beside Victor but struck bare aluminum beside Miss Della. The cockpit's radar altimeter flickered whenever a name appeared in the water. Captain Esposito said the aircraft briefly believed it was at sea level. We were carrying flood depth as information, not mass, and the airplane's instruments could not decide which kind of truth mattered. Then a child's inhaler floated past with a date from 9 years earlier. Miss Della watched me label them. "Different floods," she said. I asked what she meant. She pointed to a teenage boy clutching a red backpack. Water around him held pine needles and gray ash. "That one came from a creek fire in Oregon. Yours came from Tupelo Street." "How do you know my street?" "Because the water knows where we left somebody." Her answer struck my oldest wound. During Katrina, I had been 19. I escaped our attic through a window while my mother searched for Mr. Leon, the neighbor who used a wheelchair. I took the rescue boat. She did not. Her body was found 3 weeks later. His never was. I had built my entire career around getting people out because I had once left without looking back. At 12,800 feet, the first passenger began drowning. Victor was standing in water that did not reach anyone else's chest. He coughed, clutched his throat, and expelled a stream of black water although his head was dry. Foam carried shreds of blue paper, evacuation wristbands. He had manufactured thousands after a previous storm. The federal serial numbers showed they were relief credentials. Miss Della picked one from the water and read the name of a nursing home resident who had never reached a bus. The water carried evidence, not vengeance alone. Victor admitted his agency had stored contaminated flood samples, damaged records, and human remains in sealed drums at a warehouse near the runway. When Odette's surge breached the building that morning, he loaded 4 drums onto our aircraft under a medical waste code to protect the agency from investigators. Gabe checked the manifest. No drums were listed. We opened the aft cargo screen. 4 black cylinders stood on a pallet beneath tarps. Their lids were sealed. Their sides were dry. The water came from them anyway. I ordered Gabe to jettison the pallet through the ramp. He refused until the pilot descended below 10,000. Opening the C-130 ramp at altitude could tear loose equipment and kill passengers. Captain Esposito began a spiral descent over unpopulated marshland west of Lake Pontchartrain. Then Miss Della shouted, "Don't send it back unnamed." The water surged 2 feet. Patients floated out of litters. Oxygen cylinders broke free. Gabe and I clipped tethers to the deck and dragged people onto cargo pallets. Victor tried to reach the ramp controls alone. A current knocked him down and held his face beneath 6 inches of water. I pulled him up. "Names," Miss Della said. "It wants the names." She was right. When she read the nursing home resident's wristband aloud, the water around Victor lowered an inch. Confession changed its weight. We collected everything the flood carried: bracelets, prescription labels, a school ID, a brass apartment number, a dog tag. Passengers read names into the interphone. Each one made a pocket of water drain into the deck as though the aircraft had developed invisible holes. But every name raised the water around me. At 8,000 feet, it reached my chin. I confessed that I had left Mr. Leon. Nothing changed. Miss Della shook her head. That is who you blame, not who you left. My mother's last voicemail had been 17 seconds long. For 21 years, I kept it unheard on an old phone because listening felt worse than ignorance. The phone was in my flight bag. I played it over the cabin speaker. My mother was not calling for rescue. She said she had found Mr. Leon's empty chair. He had been evacuated that morning by his nephew. She was coming back for me. The person I had left was my mother, and the guilt I used to make myself useful had also protected me from admitting she died because she believed I was still inside. I said her name, Yvette Broussard. The water fell from my throat to my boots. For 3 seconds, the deck was nearly dry. Then one of Victor's drums split. Inside were not flood samples, but human bones packed with shredded contracts and demolition debris. The agency had bulldozed an unregistered cemetery after the last hurricane and used emergency funds to build its warehouse on the land. The 4 drums held the people displaced twice, first from their homes, then from their graves. The flood became violent. It rose against gravity, spreading across the ceiling in a dark sheet. Faces pressed downward from it, mouths full of silt. The aircraft banked. Water entered an electrical panel. Cargo lights died, leaving only red emergency lamps beneath the brown ceiling. Captain Esposito called, "Ramp altitude in 60 seconds." Victor offered us the missing burial map if we kept the drums aboard. It was stored on his encrypted tablet. Without it, the remains might never be identified. We faced the moral choice the water had built for us. Jettison the evidence and live, or carry the dead until their weight brought down everyone. Miss Della solved it differently. "Open the drums," she said. Gabe broke their seals with the crash axe. We separated the documents into waterproof medical bags and photographed every numbered bone tag. Passengers formed a tethered line, passing evidence forward while water slammed us against the cargo rails. The aft ramp lowered 10 degrees. Wind tore through the aircraft. Brown water streamed toward the opening but stopped at the edge, hanging vertically like a wall. The faces in it turned toward us. "Read," I ordered Victor. He claimed he did not know the dead. I clipped his harness to the ramp rail and held his face over the open drum. Water wrapped his chest and pulled. He began reciting from memory, parish plot numbers, contractor names, the dates he had signed destruction orders. With each fact, bone fragments lifted from the drums and disappeared into the suspended flood. The wall thickened. My tether snapped. I slid toward the open ramp. Gabe caught my wrist, but a cargo pallet struck him and broke his grip. I went over the edge as the aircraft flew at 190 knots. A hand closed around my uniform collar. My mother hung in the water outside the plane, hair floating around her face. Behind her were dozens of people joined hand to hand in the storm-dark air. She pushed me toward the ramp. I landed hard enough to crack a rib. Miss Della shouted the final name, Yvette Broussard, and the wall released. Thousands of gallons fell as one sheet into the marsh below. The aircraft leaped upward from a weight its instruments had never registered. Gabe raised the ramp. Captain Esposito stabilized at 6,000 feet with 3 electrical buses offline. We diverted to Barksdale Air Force Base. Emergency teams boarded in chemical suits and found a dry aircraft. For empty drums, 64 wet passengers, and no contamination in the air or on the deck, Victor's tablet and our evidence bags survived. Federal agents arrested him before sunrise. Search crews used his map to locate the bulldozed cemetery. The agency's directors were indicted. Victor's indictment made the case feel closed. Then the Tulsa shelter called. 64 cots used by our passengers had developed brown tide marks overnight. Each line stopped at a different height. Beneath the cots, workers found objects we had read aloud on the plane. The school ID, the dog tag, the apartment number. My mother's old phone appeared beneath mine. His battery had been dead since the flight. The final voicemail now lasted 23 seconds. After her original message, there were 6 seconds of water and my own voice saying, "I'm coming back." I returned to Tupelo Street. The lot where our house stood is empty except for a live oak. 5 feet up its trunk, a green paint chip marks the level Katrina reached. After Odette passed, a second mark appeared. It is higher, though the neighborhood did not flood. Every year on my mother's birthday, I measure it. The line has climbed from my chest to the base of my throat. Miss Della says water is patient and that naming the dead is not the same as answering them. I do not know what happens when it reaches my mouth. The flood line is waiting at my throat. Story 6. The ventilator gave a second exhalation after I disconnected it from the patient. The first breath emptied Owen Laird's lungs through the clear circuit. The second came from inside the machine, long and deliberate, fogging the tube with 5 words. Do not land in Minneapolis. I was the flight nurse aboard a King Air medevac carrying Laird 645 nautical miles from Billings, Montana, to a transplant center. He was the only survivor of the Meridian No. 9 mine collapse. 31 hours underground had filled his lungs with black particulate and left him comatose. My job was to keep him alive for the 645-mile flight. My weakness was that Meridian Mining also paid my salary. Their contract kept our rural air ambulance service open. 6 months earlier, I had ignored an abnormal blood gas after a company doctor called it equipment error. That patient died. I promised myself I would never defer again. At 11:26 p.m., over eastern Montana, Laird's oxygen saturation rose from 82 to 100 without a pulse change. His chest expanded against the straps. The ventilator exhaled again. Fargo, runway 27. Captain Russo assumed condensation and vibration made the marks. I wiped the tube dry and switched to the backup ventilator. It wrote the same warning. Then Laird opened his mouth. Black dust poured uphill from his tongue and collected against the cabin ceiling. My medic partner, Wes, sealed the patient compartment curtain. We donned N95 masks and goggles. The particle monitor showed safe air, but the dust formed branching lines across the ceiling. 6 main tunnels, 14 crosscuts, a circular chamber. It was drawing the mine. Wes photographed it. The map included a shaft Meridian's official plan did not show. Laird had not crawled randomly to survival. Something below had shown him a route the company denied existed. I drew blood. Under the portable microscope, his red cells were normal. Between them moved transparent sacs filled with coal dust. They contracted whenever cabin pressure changed. I tried every field test in our kit. The sacs ignored antibiotics and antifungals. Ultraviolet light made them align like compass needles. When I placed a drop beside an uncharged defibrillator pad, the sacs gathered into 33 clusters, although the official missing count was 30. Wes suggested contamination from the mine rescue tent. I compared the particles with residue sealed in Laird's boots. The boot dust contained crushed shale and diesel. His blood contained carbon spheres of identical diameter, manufactured rather than mined. On the chest radiograph, those spheres outlined tiny rooms along his ribs. In each room, a pale mark expanded and contracted at a different rate. Dr. Halpern, Meridian's physician, called through the satellite link and ordered us not to divert. He said Laird needed specialized extracorporeal filtration in Minneapolis. When I described the sacs, he stopped asking clinical questions and requested our cabin altitude. Russo heard him. Why does that matter? Halpern disconnected. At 18,000 feet, the black ceiling map changed. New lines extended east toward Minneapolis. Beside each line, dust printed a time. 12:41, our scheduled landing. I searched the sealed medical packet. Beneath Laird's transfer record was a hazardous material sheet for carbon-fixing microbial aggregate M9. Meridian had injected an experimental organism into the mine to bind methane and store carbon in abandoned seams. Heat from drilling caused it to bloom. The collapse was not geological. The colony had contracted miles of coal like muscle. Laird was not infected by accident. He was its transport vessel. The physician had placed a pressure-sensitive capsule in his feeding tube. At normal destination altitude, it would rupture and aerosolize the aggregate through our ventilator exhaust into the ambulance bay. Laird was a planned transport vessel. I clamped the tube and removed the capsule. It was already empty. The colony was in the ventilators. Wes developed a cough. Black lines appeared beneath the skin of his neck, branching toward his jaw. When I touched them, my fingertips felt rhythmic vibration. 31 beats, then a pause. The number of missing miners. The cockpit received a priority message directing us to continue to Minneapolis under a federal research authorization. Meridian had notified an agency, but not to warn them. They wanted a metropolitan hospital equipped to culture the organism. Russo turned west toward an Air Force base. Air traffic control canceled our clearance and told him our aircraft was under quarantine. 2 military jets appeared 10 miles behind us. We could not land near a population. We could not stay airborne. The colony spread faster as pressure fell. We had 94 minutes of fuel. The ventilator wrote another line. Return shaft 9. It did not want Minneapolis. That warning had been real. The false explanation was that the colony merely sought to reproduce. The deeper truth appeared when I matched the ceiling map with Laird's heart rhythm. Every contraction corresponded to a tunnel collapse. The organism had supported the mine for years, holding back unstable rock while drilling injured it. When Meridian injected a sterilizing agent, it closed passages around the source. The 30 miners were not dead. Laird carried their breathing pattern because the colony connected every air pocket underground. The times on the map were not infection milestones. They were estimates of when each pocket would run out of oxygen. If we destroyed the organism, rescuers would lose the only map. If we preserved it, it could spread through human lungs. Russo found one possible landing site, a closed Air Force strip outside Minot, North Dakota. Snow covered the runway. The nearest town was 11 miles away. We had 40 minutes. Wes collapsed. The lines reached his lips. When he exhaled, the monitor printed the name Cal Rivera, one of the missing miners. Laird's body had become a relay. Wes was becoming another. I connected both men to a closed anesthesia circuit and packed the exhaust filters in saline. Salt slowed the sacs but did not kill them. Pure oxygen made them expand. Carbon dioxide made them retreat deeper into tissue. I lowered the cabin pressure manually to simulate 25,000 feet. Russo and his co-pilot used oxygen masks. My vision narrowed. The colony came out of Wes's skin in clear blisters, seeking the thinner air. I sealed each blister beneath adhesive film and wrote the miner's name it transmitted. We collected 27. The jets ordered Russo to descend. He refused. One moved close enough for its lights to fill our windows. The 28th name appeared on Laird's chest. The 29th formed across my left forearm. The organism was inside me. At 14,000 feet cabin altitude, I could hear the miners through my own lungs. Not voices, tool strikes, counted breaths, someone reciting birthdays. The colony showed me a final chamber beyond the official mine boundary. 3 additional people were trapped there. Contract workers omitted from the shift roster. Meridian's 30 missing workers were really 33. The company had erased 3 undocumented laborers before rescue began. I made Russo transmit every name and coordinate on an open emergency frequency. Once the data went public, the research agency could not bury it. Meridian's doctor broke onto the channel and threatened our licenses. Write that down too, I told Russo. The colony reacted to the broadcast. All 33 breathing patterns synchronized. Laird sat upright against 4 restraints. Wes rose beside him. Their eyes remained closed, but both turned toward the southeast, toward Shaft 9. The aircraft pitched down. Transparent cords had grown through the patient cot and into the floor cables. The colony was trying to turn us. I tore open 2 specimen coolers, poured warm saline over their dry ice, and sealed the patient curtain. Carbon dioxide fogged the deck. Alarms screamed. Russo lost visibility behind the cockpit door. I wore the last portable oxygen bottle and cut the cords one by one. Each cut stopped a miner's breathing in my head. I had to keep going. Laird's heart arrested after the 9th. Wes's after the 20th. At the final cord, the whole cabin flexed inward like a lung. The black map fell from the ceiling as dry powder. Russo landed at Minot with 8 minutes of fuel. Military quarantine teams surrounded us. I gave them 33 names before losing consciousness. Rescue crews entered meridian number 916 hours later using the coordinates broadcast from our flight. They found 30 people alive. The 3 erased contractors had died in the final chamber, but their bodies were recovered and identified. Laird and Wes were declared dead on arrival. Meridian blamed mine gas and an unauthorized diversion. Recordings from the emergency frequency forced a criminal inquiry. The carbon storage program was shut down. For a while, people called me a whistleblower and a hero. Then my lung scans changed. The transparent sacs survived inside scars left by childhood pneumonia. They no longer carried dust, but each month they add another narrow branch. My CT images now match the tunnels of meridian number 9 down to the last crosscut. Doctors keep me in a negative pressure apartment on the Minot base. Air passes through incinerators before release. I cannot see my family without glass between us. My nursing license expired. Meridian's lawyers argue that my body is proprietary research material. The miners visit in groups. When they place their palms against the window, the branches in my lungs contract. They say it feels like the mountain recognizing them. Last Tuesday, a new passage appeared on my scan. It descends below Shaft 9, deeper than any survey. At its end are 33 small chambers and 1 larger room. Something in that room breathes after I stop. The Air Force geologists have begun drilling toward it. I begged them not to. They showed me the federal authorization and asked me to describe the route. I refused, so they increased the pressure in my apartment. At sea level equivalent, the branches grew visible beneath my ribs and traced the map for their cameras. They copied every line. Tonight, the building ventilation shut off at 11:26. Through the wall, I hear machinery turning southeast. My lungs answer with 33 shallow breaths. Then comes 1 deeper breath from below them. Shaft 9 opens when I exhale. Story 7. The windows on the left side showed Utah in summer, while the windows on the right showed the same towns buried under snow. We were at 17,000 feet above the Great Salt Lake on a charter organized for the total solar eclipse. Our flight plan was an oval lasting 52 minutes. Time to keep 80 astronomy donors inside the moon's shadow. It was October. There should have been no snow. I was the lead flight attendant, Salma Noor. My practical goal was to deliver a flawless charter for people who had paid $18,000 a seat. I also needed to get home before midnight. My father's dementia had worsened, and he recognized me only if I followed the same evening routine. At row 5, I raised both shades to compare. The left window showed a green Antelope Island under noon sun. The right showed Salt Lake City at night, every street lit. Both views moved beneath us at the correct speed. My phone camera recorded only gray cloud. Captain Hensley saw the actual lake and clear October sky. Instruments were normal. He suggested a fault in the electrochromic windows installed for eclipse viewing. The charter sponsor, physicist Dr. Nolan Rusk, agreed too quickly. "Keep the shades down until totality," he told me. Passengers had already noticed. A woman in 7A saw a baseball field where her house should be. The man in 14F saw a wildfire. At 11C, a retired judge began sobbing at the sight of a roadside diner. My wife asked me to meet her there in 1986, he said. I never went. The diner's glass door opened. His seat belt unlatched by itself. I closed the shade. The belt locked. The door vanished. The views could invite passengers, but only through an open window. Sounded absurd. Aircraft windows do not open. Yet the inner acrylic at 11C had become soft and deep, like a vertical surface of water. When I touched it with a service spoon, the spoon passed through. It came back carrying hot coffee and a receipt dated June 4, 1986. Rusk took it from me. His research group had designed polarized layers using material recovered from a military optics program. He claimed they displayed counterfactual probability fields, images of outcomes produced by choices people almost made. We were not seeing past or future. We were seeing lives close enough to ours that regret could reach them. The judge tried to open his shade again. I moved him to row 3 and sealed 11C with galley tape. Across the cabin, passengers saw unlived careers, children they never had, parents still alive, cities spared from disasters. The eclipse began at 1:31 p.m. Every clock in the cabin stopped. Sunlight outside the cockpit dimmed normally, but inside, each row entered a different hour. Ice formed on drinks in row 2. Fresh coffee steamed in row 3. A passenger walked from row 8 to row 9 and aged 10 years between steps, then became young again when I pulled him back. Rusk ordered everyone seated. He was no longer pretending this was an equipment fault. I tested the phenomenon with objects before trusting his explanation. A sealed soda passed through 5A and returned warm, with a discontinued label. My watch crossed 8F for 1 second and came back 19 minutes slow. At 12C, a paper safety card emerged covered with notes in my handwriting, including a phone number I had never known. The number belonged to the memory care facility where my father would be admitted 2 years later. I tore up the card. Both halves crawled toward the window until I lowered the shade. That established another limit. Objects altered by a view remained attracted to it, but opaque barriers interrupted the pull. We taped foil blankets across the worst windows. The images burned through them as pale rectangles. The polarized layers did not merely show alternate lives. During totality, they aligned those possibilities with physical space. The cabin had become a corridor among 80 realities. He had planned it. His daughter Mara died in a bicycle accident at age 12. In one probability field, he had repaired her helmet strap that morning and she survived. He had selected our flight path because calculations placed that reality at window 11A during the eclipse. The empty seat there held a red child's helmet. No one remembered bringing it aboard. A passenger in 6F pushed his hand through a window showing a university laboratory. His wedding ring disappeared. When he pulled back, he had no scar from the marriage that ring represented. His wife across the aisle no longer knew him. Crossing did not create a duplicate or send someone back. It rewrote the current world to fit the chosen life. Rusk intended to open 11A fully and bring Mara through. What happens to this cabin? I asked. He looked at the stopped clock. The probability with greater emotional coherence remains. I understood the euphemism. A world where his daughter lived did not include this charter, this aircraft, or most of the people aboard. If he anchored it, our current lives would be overwritten. The price was not death, but erasure. At totality, all shades opened by themselves. The cabin filled with incompatible light. Rain fell from 4A. Desert heat rolled through 9F. Row 13 showed an empty salt flat beneath a blood-red sky. Passengers ripped at belts, desperate to reach better lives. Some fought to keep windows closed. Others begged us to let them through. My father appeared beyond 2C, standing in our old kitchen. He was 20 years younger. He held the blue teapot he had broken after his diagnosis and called me by the childhood nickname he had forgotten. I almost touched the window. Then he said, "Come home, Sarah. My name is Salma." The views offered desire, not truth. They shaped themselves from the nearest regret and filled gaps with whatever would persuade us. Desire made the images persuasive, not truthful. Rusk reached 11A. The acrylic dissolved beneath his hands. Beyond it, a suburban street replaced the sky. Mara stood beside a bicycle wearing the red helmet. "Dad," she said. The aircraft shuddered. Rose began disappearing from the rear. Not going dark, ceasing to have existed. Seat numbers jumped from 20 to 18. The passenger count on my tablet fell from 80 to 69. Nobody remembered the missing people except me. The polarized control unit was beneath 11A. Rusk had armored it in a locked case. I took the crash axe from the forward closet and moved through a cabin whose geometry changed with every open shade. At row 9, the aisle led into a hospital where I had chosen medical school instead of airline training. At row 7, it became my father's house after his death. At row 5, there was no floor, only the desert 2 miles below. I used seatbacks like ladder rungs and kept my eyes on emergency path lights. They remained connected to our aircraft's batteries, the only lines belonging wholly to our reality. Rusk lifted Mara through the window. She weighed almost nothing. Her edges flickered with every possible age. 12, 20, infant, old woman. She looked at the cabin and asked, "Which one are you?" Rusk froze. There was not one save daughter. There were millions of counterfactual Maras, and the system had condensed them around his need. He could not restore a person by selecting an outcome. He could only force every version into one body. Mara screamed with all those voices. Windows shattered inward without breaking. Alternate rooms, streets, and skies spilled across the cabin. A passenger stepped into a life where he was governor and vanished from our manifest. Another chose a living mother and returned as a child. The aircraft lost 40% of its recorded weight while remaining physically heavy. Hensley could no longer control pitch because the computers and airframe disagreed about what existed. I reached the control case and struck it. The axe glanced off. Rusk wrapped himself around Mara and begged me to stop. The emergency light battery sat beneath the adjacent floor panel. I ripped out its leads and pressed them against the polarized case. The short circuit blew every shade controller. Rusk had one final choice: release Mara or hold her as our reality collapsed. She touched his face and said, in a tired adult voice, "You keep choosing the accident." He let go. She fell backward through 11A. The window hardened. Rusk pounded it until his hands broke. The eclipse ended at 1:35 p.m. Cabin clocks advanced 4 minutes. The missing rows snapped back into place, but not everyone returned. We landed in Salt Lake City with 73 passengers. The manifest listed 73. Catering records showed 73 meals. Families waiting at the terminal expected 73 people. 7 carry-ons remained in bins, but their luggage tags were blank and their contents carried no names. Only I remembered the 7. Rusk was arrested for unauthorized aircraft modification, not homicide. Investigators found conventional dimming panels in every window. The armored control case contained a melted emergency battery and nothing else. He insisted his daughter had spoken to him. His family said he had never had a daughter. For several weeks, I thought destroying the unit had preserved our world. Then I went home. My father called me Salma, clear and certain. His neurologist found no dementia in his records. The blue teapot stood intact on the stove. My father remembered buying it the previous week. I should have been grateful. Instead, I searched family photographs. My mother, who died when I was 9, appeared in pictures through my college graduation. In the newest image, she stood beside a woman I did not recognize, both wearing airline uniforms. My father said the stranger was my older sister Sarah. Sarah had died in an Aviation Academy fire before I was born. There was no Academy fire in the news archives. There was no death certificate. Yet her room existed at the end of my father's hallway, preserved with uniforms, safety manuals, and a graduation photograph from an airline school in Reno that had never existed. The eclipse did not restore only Rusk's regrets. Every open window exchanged fragments among nearby lives. We landed in a world assembled from 73 private longings. Most people never noticed what changed. I write down everything I remember before it can be replaced. 80 passengers, my mother's funeral, my father's diagnosis, no sister. The list grows less convincing each day. Aircraft N811RK returned to service with standard windows. On its first flight, cleaners reported that row 11 had no window shades. Mechanics removed the inner panels and found brick walls behind 11A and 11F. Through the brick at 11A came the sound of a bicycle bell. The 11th row has no past. Story 8. The extinguisher's safety wire had been crimped around a human tooth. I found it during the pre-flight seal inventory on a maintenance ferry from Tulsa to Roswell. The Boeing 737 carried no passengers, only 2 pilots, 4 maintenance executives, a mechanic, and me. My name is Maureen Pike. I spent 19 years as a flight attendant before a back injury moved me into cabin airworthiness work. On ferry flights, I verified that doors, oxygen equipment, seats, and galley systems were secured after heavy maintenance. Aircraft 402 had spent 11 months stripped to its ribs. Horizon Continental rebuilt it with certified parts salvaged from other airplanes. The executives were taking it to New Mexico for repainting and return to service. My practical goal was to sign the cabin release. If I refused without proof, Horizon could terminate my disability accommodation. I had already reported 2 questionable repairs and been warned about professional flexibility. I photographed the tooth, cut the wire, and bagged it. Beneath the extinguisher was a red maintenance tag. Remove before flight. Cabin. Mechanic Luis Aranda said it was a prank. He replaced the extinguisher and searched the galley with me. We found no other tags. At 2:07 p.m., 20 minutes after takeoff, a red tag appeared on door 2L. Remove before flight. Hinges. The door was armed but locked. The hinge pins had passed inspection. At 2:11, all 3 pins rotated halfway out. Luis and I used a galley cart as a brace. Pressure shoved the door against it with bone-deep bangs. Captain Soren descended to 10,000 feet and slowed. Luis hammered the pins home while I held the cart. The executives emerged from first class only after the danger passed. Their chief, Martin Creel, ordered me not to document an indicator anomaly until landing. The tag vanished from the door. It reappeared on his jacket. Remove before flight. Authority. Creel went pale. The cabin parts catalog revealed the first connection. Door 2LS hinges came from Coastal 771, destroyed in a runway excursion. The galley extinguisher came from Alpine 22, which suffered an in-flight fire. Seat tracks came from Meridian 406, lost after an explosive decompression. Horizon had assembled aircraft 402 from 3 wrecks. The paperwork called them incident-free donor hulls. The parts were legal only because somebody had rewritten their histories. Luis confessed he had planted the first tag and tooth. His sister died aboard Alpine 22. The company never recovered her remains, but a salvager found the tooth fused inside the extinguisher bracket and mailed it to him. He accepted the maintenance assignment to expose the parts chain. He had tagged the extinguisher before boarding. He had not tagged the door. We searched the empty cabin. Red tags hung from oxygen panels, seat legs, ceiling fasteners, and window latches. Each named a component rather than a fault. Remove before flight. Pressure. Remove before flight. Floor. Remove before flight. Memory. The last one hung from the cockpit door. At 2:19, passenger oxygen masks dropped. Instead of yellow cups, 3 rows released blackened masks from Coastal 771, their hoses inflated with smoke. At 2:22, floor panels lifted over the wing and exposed a crack running across 2 seat tracks. At 2:25, the cabin lights dimmed to the emergency pattern recorded during Meridian 400 SIX's final minute. The aircraft was not haunted by one crash. It was replaying all 3. Creel offered a mechanical explanation: mismatched components failing under their first pressure cycle. He ordered Soren to divert to Amarillo and told us to remove every tagged item before it failed. I made Creel read each donor record aloud while Luis compared rivet stamps. The declared Alpine extinguisher had actually been recovered 20 feet from its cabin. Coastal's hinge pins carried heat discoloration hidden beneath chrome plating. Meridian's seat tracks had been polished until crack warnings disappeared. This was not random salvage. Horizon selected components that looked cosmetically intact after investigators released them, then created replacement photographs for the certification files. One executive named prices as we worked: $80 for a mask unit, $600 for a hinge assembly, $12,000 saved per row of seats. The dead had been reduced to a discount column. That became our false rule. We cut out masks, unbolted 2 seats, dumped galley equipment, and isolated wiring. Each removed item stopped one failure, but a new tag appeared elsewhere. The extinguisher tag moved to a coffee maker. Door hinges moved to overhead bin latches. The more parts we removed, the more the airplane assigned their histories to substitutes. "It isn't identifying bad components," Luis said. "It's assigning roles." The aircraft wanted a fire source, a failed door, a broken floor, and a decompression. If we removed the original parts, it chose new ones. The airplane was assigning roles. Creel knew why. Horizon's engineers had discovered that composite panels retained microscopic stress patterns after accidents. Reusing enough material could reproduce old structural vibrations. They called it resonance stacking. He had approved aircraft 402 to prove crashes could be erased by distributing their parts across one refurbished hull. Instead, they had concentrated 3 last moments inside one cabin. At 2:31, the public address system played voices. "Smoke at row 20. Door will not open. Floor is gone." 3 flight attendant crews speaking over one another. I recognized procedures, not people. Each crew was trying to complete a different evacuation in the air. The red tags began listing names. Luis Aranda, Alpine 22. Martin Creel, Coastal 771. Maureen Pike, Meridian 406. Creel insisted the airplane was randomly assigning us. Luis found the accident litigation files on Creel's laptop and proved otherwise. Creel had been claims director for Coastal 771. He suppressed a door inspection that would have grounded the aircraft. Later, he approved destruction of Alpine 22's cabin evidence. I had no connection to Meridian 406, or so I believed. The flight's lead attendant, Ellen Pike, had been my aunt. My family told me she died in a house fire before I was born. Horizon had paid my grandparents to keep her name out of wrongful death litigation because she had reported the cracked seat tracks before the accident. My career had not begun with a childhood fascination for flight. My mother kept Ellen's old wings in a drawer, and I had found them at 8. The dead had recruited me through a family lie. The cabin pressure warning sounded at 2:36. Every red tag tore loose and flew toward the center aisle. They wrapped around components in the exact arrangement of 3 accident diagrams. Fire aft, failed exit left, fractured floor at row 14. Then the floor cracked. Air screamed through a 6-inch opening. Papers and insulation vanished into it. Luis fell, caught a seat leg, and struck his head. I clipped my tether to his harness and pulled him clear as the crack widened. Soren could not descend. The elevator controls had begun vibrating in the pattern from Coastal 771. Amarillo was under us, but the aircraft kept turning southeast toward an abandoned runway 40 miles away. Creel recognized it. Horizon had hidden the remains of all 3 donor hulls at that runway before selling their parts. Aircraft 402 was not trying to reenact 3 crashes separately. It was taking the evidence back to one place. We had to let it. I stopped removing tags. We secured ourselves in forward jump seats and allowed the cabin to assemble its failures. Fire ignited in the aft coffee maker. The left door bowed. Row 14's floor peeled upward. I fought each emergency only enough to prevent it from consuming us before landing. Luis discharged the tooth-marked extinguisher into the galley fire. Voices over the PA gave commands with us. When I shouted, "Stay low," 3 dead crews repeated it. Aircraft 402 descended without pilot input. The abandoned runway appeared through smoke. Beside it lay 3 scraped rectangles in the sand where fuselages had been buried. As our wheels touched, the soil split open. Hundreds of tagged parts rose through the sand, not floating, but pulled upward by cables, wires, and roots wrapped around them. They struck the aircraft in a storm of aluminum. Windows shattered. Panels tore away. Each missing component found the place it had occupied before its crash. The cabin rebuilt itself around us. For 19 seconds, I sat inside 3 complete airplanes superimposed. Passengers occupied every seat as pale impressions pressed into upholstery. Ellen sat across from me in a red uniform. She checked my harness, nodded once, and turned toward her door. All 3 crews shouted, "Brace!" We stopped in the dirt beyond the runway. Rescuers from Roswell found the pilots, Luis, Creel, 3 executives, and me alive. 1 executive died from a piece of seat track. The fuselage lay split open, surrounded by accident debris Horizon claimed had been destroyed years earlier. Federal investigators reopened all 3 cases. Creel went to prison. Luis buried his sister's tooth. My family added Ellen's name to our grave marker. For 6 months, I believed the airplane had forced the truth into daylight and finished. Then investigators began inventorying the debris. Every serial number was gone. Stamped metal had become smooth. Barcodes faded from labels. Records on secure servers lost their part identifiers at the same time. Without numbers, no component belonged legally to any aircraft or any victim. The parts had not returned to provide evidence. They had returned to stop being evidence. Horizon's executives called it corrosion and settled the cases before a court could examine the material. The wreckage remains in Bay 6 at a federal hangar. I visit every year on Ellen's birthday. Last time, the 3 cabin layouts were gone. The debris had arranged itself into one unfamiliar configuration with wider aisles, different bins, and 10 exits. Engineers say it resembles no aircraft ever built. On the floor are 214 red outlines where seats will go. No tag names the flight. No record gives a date. Yet the forward galley contains a uniform in my size, pressed and hanging from a new hook. I will not put it on. Nothing in Bay 6 has a serial number anymore. Story 9. The life raft inflated beside our sinking aircraft with someone already inside it. The figure lay face down in a faded orange flight suit, arms tucked beneath its chest. Our 26 passengers crowded the right wing of the ditched charter plane while Chesapeake Bay rose over the left windows. "Move away from it," I shouted. Nobody listened. They saw a survivor. I saw a suit with no wet footprints, no life jacket, and a uniform patch from an airline that had ceased operating in 1974. My name is Eden Cho. I was the cabin attendant aboard a restored Convair used for history tours out of Baltimore. Before that, I spent 6 years as a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. I left after a night search in which I followed a false beacon while a fishing crew drowned for miles away. I had not entered open water since. At 4:16 p.m., a flock of gulls struck both engines at 2,300 feet. Captain Brenner ditched us 6 miles east of North Point. The fuselage stayed intact. We had perhaps 4 minutes before it sank. My practical goal was to account for 26 passengers, 2 pilots, and myself, deploy 2 rafts, and reach the Coast Guard before hypothermia took anyone. The first raft was rated for 20. It sagged as if carrying twice that weight. Passenger Joel Merritt grabbed the orange figure's shoulder and rolled it over. The flight suit was empty. Inside it, black translucent ribbons pulsed around a brass oxygen mask. The ribbons tightened. The suit sat upright and released a human sigh. Passengers stampeded back toward the wing. The aircraft rolled. I cut the raft painter before its weight dragged us under and launched the second raft from the opposite exit. Our emergency locator transmitter began pinging. The black ribbons in the first raft pulsed at the same interval. The signal made them move. I turned off the portable beacon. The colony collapsed. Brenner's cockpit transmitter continued automatically underwater, so the ribbons rose again, shaping the empty suit into a kneeling body. We loaded 20 people into the clean raft and kept 9 on the wing. Coast Guard Sector Maryland answered our radio. A helicopter was 12 minutes away. A rescue boat was 27. The sun was setting. Water temperature was 53 degrees. The contaminated raft drifted back, although wind pushed the other direction. Its painter had wrapped around something below. Each time the submerged aircraft settled, the raft pulled tighter and our remaining wing sank. I clipped a knife to my wrist. "You're not going under," Brenner said. He knew my history. "Then we lose 9 people before the helicopter arrives." I entered the water. Cold locked my lungs. Beneath the raft, the black ribbons formed a rope descending 30 feet. They were not tied to our aircraft. They reached into darkness where another fuselage rested upright on the bottom. Its paint read Tidewater 216. I knew the accident. Tidewater Flight 216 disappeared over the bay in 1974 with 31 people aboard. Investigators blamed an electrical fire. Only floating seat cushions were recovered. The colony had threaded through its open emergency exit. Every ribbon ended inside a seat. The raft had not carried a survivor to us. It had brought the shape of an entire cabin. I cut the biological rope, closed around my arm. Small barbs entered my dry suit and vibrated against bone at the beacon frequency. Then I heard voices through my teeth. "Brace. Release belts. Come this way." The final commands of Tidewater's cabin crew had traveled for 52 years through the colony's tissue. I surfaced with the ribbons attached. They spread across our wing, filling rivet lines and seams. The conveyor stopped sinking. Passengers cheered, believing a sandbar had caught us. I knew better. The organism was holding the aircraft at the surface. Our second raft rose 6 inches as its impossible extra weight vanished. The colony had not been trying to drown us. It had reinforced damaged metal and trapped air beneath the fuselage. I counted again and found 30 people in and around our rafts, 1 more than the manifest. The orange suit sat high enough to resemble a person from a distance, and frightened passengers had included it every time they shouted totals to the helicopter. Rescue doctrine treats an uncertain count as a living victim. The colony had learned that rule from decades of radio traffic. By shaping one empty uniform, it forced responders to remain, search, and transmit. I removed the brass mask. A name had been scratched inside: Carol Wynn, the lead attendant on Tidewater 216. Beneath it were tally marks: 31 completed, a 32nd left open. The organism had been requesting rescue for someone who never existed. It resembled a marine animal responding to vibration and using wreckage as structure. Then Joel fell. Black filaments entered a cut on his leg. He stood rigid and shouted an evacuation command in a woman's voice. 3 other passengers obeyed without thinking and stepped off the wing. The colony did not distinguish an aircraft from a crew. It repaired both. The orange flight suit lifted its arms. Joel mirrored it. When Tidewater's recorded crew pointed toward the submerged exit, he tried to lead our passengers underwater. The organism was preserving the accident, not the people. It held wrecks at the exact stage between impact and sinking and compelled living bodies to complete unfinished procedures. I restrained Joel with a flotation sling. The colony tightened around his muscles. Brenner helped me cut the suit away without cutting his skin. The helicopter called 2 minutes out. Its direction finder transmitted a stronger homing pulse. The bay beneath us moved. Ribbons rose in acres, connecting tidewaters wrecked to other shapes on the bottom. Boats, cars, aircraft fragments, even a bell buoy that had vanished years earlier. Each object began returning its last sounds through the water. Horns, engines, mayday calls, screams. The colony was not limited to Tidewater 216. It was a living archive of every machine that had sunk there. The helicopter's signal synchronized it. Wreckage lifted from the bottom. A corroded wing broke the surface and sliced our clean raft. People spilled into the water. A fishing boat's mast rose beneath the conveyor and impaled its belly. The wing tilted nearly vertical. I ordered everyone to use seat cushions and link arms. Brenner launched flares, but the colony caught them above the water in black nets. The helicopter hovered overhead and lowered a rescue basket. Ribbons climbed the cable. If they reached the aircraft, they would enter hydraulic lines, wounds, headsets, anything that vibrated. The helicopter would become another preserved emergency, then carry the colony toward Baltimore. The Coast Guard crew could not see the transparent filaments in rotor wash. They kept lowering. Rescue was how the organism spread from wreck to wreck. I swam for the basket, removed the emergency hook, and cut the hoist cable. The basket fell beside me. The helicopter crew shouted over the radio. I transmitted one sentence. Biological hazard follows acoustic beacons. Shut down transmissions and withdraw. They refused. Rescue doctrine required them to maintain visual contact. I threatened to fire a flare into their intake. That made them pull away. Without the helicopter pulse, the colony slowed. Underwater, the cockpit beacon still pinged every 50 seconds. It had to stop. Our conveyor was almost submerged. Reaching the transmitter meant entering the cockpit through the left window, moving beneath collapsing wreckage, and doing the exact thing that had ended my rescue career, following a beacon underwater. I took Brenner's spare air bottle and dived. Inside the cockpit, instruments glowed though the batteries were off. Black ribbons sat in both pilot seats, moving empty harnesses through a landing checklist. Every 50 seconds, one filament struck the beacon casing like a finger on a bell. I pulled the mounting pins. The unit would not release. Ribbons entered my glove and flexed my hand toward the instrument panel. The voices returned through my teeth. Remain aboard. Complete evacuation. I saw why Tidewater's attendant had never escaped. Her restraint belt remained fastened in the wreck below. She had stayed because her passenger count was short by one. The missing person had been rescued by a private boat and misidentified, a fact discovered years later. She died waiting for someone who was already safe. I spoke through my regulator. 31 accounted for. The ribbons released the beacon. I tore it free and drove my knife through its battery. Silence struck the water. Every lifted wreck fell. I barely cleared the cockpit before the conveyor sank. Debris dragged the colony down in vast black curtains. Joel stopped fighting. The bay became ordinary gray water scattered with cushions and people. The rescue boat reached us 22 minutes later using radar and our last known coordinates. Not a beacon. All 29 aboard were recovered. 2 passengers had fractures. 9 were hypothermic. Nobody drowned. Officials quarantined us at a naval clinic. They found black protein beneath Joel's skin and in my wrist wounds, but it dissolved when removed from vibration. Navy divers located Tidewater 216 exactly where I described it. Quarantine ended after 3 months. Then the Navy classified the wreck survey. An engineer visited me with photographs of black ribbons sealing bullet holes in pressure tanks. The organism could preserve damaged submarines, aircraft, and offshore platforms. Its ability to encode vibration meant it could also store sonar signals without electronics. They had begun cultivation. I told them the colony preserved disasters, not structures. The engineer replied that behavior could be conditioned. The Coast Guard rejected my request to reopen the Tidewater case. No public record now mentions the recovered fuselage. The families were told divers found nothing. Last spring, our service introduced self-sealing life rafts made with a classified naval polymer. During demonstrations, punctures close in seconds. The material is black, translucent, and activated by the emergency beacon. I attended one test in Elizabeth City. When the raft inflated, its floor developed 31 shallow depressions, arranged like seats in Tidewater 216. The instructor saw only reinforced chambers. I saw the outline of a kneeling flight attendant near the exit. She raised one arm and waited for a count. The beacon pinged. Every new raft has a pulse. Story 10. Every seat belt in the wreckage had been cut from the side touching the passenger. Not torn by impact, not severed by rescue tools. Cut with parallel incisions less than a millimeter deep, as if something inside the webbing had opened each belt at the same instant. I was the survival factors investigator assigned to reconstruct the cabin of Paragon Flight 582 at a secure hangar near Dulles Airport, Virginia. Before joining the investigation board, I spent 14 years as a flight attendant. My younger sister Lena was the aft attendant on 582. The airline listed her among 176 dead. My practical goal was to determine why 11 people survived a crash that should have killed everyone. My private goal was to prove Lena had not abandoned her jump seat. A passenger video appeared to show her standing in the aisle 9 seconds before impact, violating the brace procedure she had taught me. We rebuilt the cabin from 4,300 fragments. Each piece was laser scanned and placed on a steel frame. Seat rows 8 through 21 returned first. The 11 survivors had all been in row 17, though tickets and boarding scans placed them throughout the aircraft. Nobody remembered moving. The cockpit recorder captured a terrain warning, Captain Voss ordering brace, and then a low tone at 19 Hz, below normal hearing, strong enough to vibrate organs. After that tone, every passenger became silent. Chief Engineer Adrian Pell called it impact resonance. Lena's voice followed the tone. Heads down. Stay down. Let go when it opens. The last sentence was not standard procedure. At 8:17 p.m. during our first full reconstruction test, the cabin lights turned on without power. All recovered seat belts fastened themselves. The 11 row 17 belts opened. That was our first undeniable proof. I stopped the test and searched the aircraft modifications. Paragon had installed an experimental neuroacoustic compliance system behind cabin speakers. Its purpose was to transmit low-frequency cues during emergencies, reducing panic and making passengers obey crew commands. The Federal Aviation Administration had not approved it. Pell's company built it. He claimed Flight 582 carried an inert prototype with no power connection. Wiring diagrams showed otherwise. The system drew current from the emergency light battery and activated automatically when the terrain warning sounded. The passengers had not chosen to move. The tone synchronized their motor responses, and Lena's command directed them into row 17, the section she judged least damaged. She saved 11 people, but moving 176 people into one row was impossible in 9 seconds. The survivor interviews offered a stranger detail. Each remembered being in row 17 alone. Each saw empty seats and Lena kneeling before them. Their experiences overlapped in the same physical space. We recreated the seating with weighted mannequins. 11 could not fit across 6 seats without blocking the aisle or crushing one another. Yet the recovered cushions showed 11 separate compression patterns, each centered in the same seat. Blood from all 11 survivors appeared on one buckle without mixing at the edges, as if deposited on separate surfaces. One survivor, a cellist named Marin Holt, drew the cabin she remembered. Row 17 had no walls, only 11 identical aisles converging on Lena. At the end of each aisle was a different crash site. Lena chose one path and closed the others with her hands. Marin had never seen the passenger video or met the other survivors. The acoustic system had done more than enforce movement. It had synchronized perception so completely that 11 incompatible positions occupied one shared survival path. A collective hallucination, Pell said. Then we examined the cuts. Microscopy showed seatbelt fibers bent from within, aligned by a pressure wave carrying the exact frequency of Lena's final command. The cabin materials had recorded not sound but intention. Brace, gather, release. When assembled, the wreckage replayed it. Power awakened the command. The second was worse. Anyone who heard the 19 Hz tone joined it. A technician named Ross powered one speaker for half a second. He walked to row 17, sat on another technician's lap as if the seat were empty, and remained unable to see her for 6 minutes. Pell ordered the hangar sealed. He was not protecting us. He wanted a second activation with sensors around the cabin. If the system could place multiple people into one survivable position, it would transform crash safety and military transport. I demanded destruction of the speakers. Pell showed me the evidence authorization bearing my supervisor's signature. Lena and the passengers had become a proprietary proof of concept. The investigation was not determining whether the system caused the crash. It was measuring what the dead had taught it. I copied the files and scheduled a press briefing. Before I could leave, hangar doors locked. Pell began a powered reconstruction without the board's approval. At 10:04 p.m., emergency lights illuminated all 21 rows. The tone entered through my feet, too low to hear. My heartbeat synchronized with it. 12 investigators and technicians stopped moving. Lena's voice came from every broken speaker. Heads down. Stay down. My body walked toward row 17. The reconstructed cabin became whole around us, not repaired, but perceived as complete by every nervous system the tone controlled. Walls covered the hangar. Night appeared beyond windows. We were aboard Flight 582 descending toward a mountain. Instruments outside the frame still showed the current date. The wreckage was imposing one remembered emergency on present matter. We crowded into row 17. Bodies overlapped without touching. Each person believed the others absent. I stayed aware only because scar tissue in my left ear distorted the tone. Lena stood in the aisle. She was not a ghost with a private soul. Her shape was assembled from the final expectation of 176 passengers. The flight attendant who would tell them how to survive. She looked exactly as I remembered, including the small burn on her wrist that no passenger should have known. "You're still here," I said. They kept the command. Through the front galley, I saw the mountain approaching. When the reconstruction reached impact, the 19 Hz wave would release into the hangar structure. Pell's sensors predicted it could travel through power lines and public address systems across the airport. Thousands of people might enter the same brace response. Pell stood outside the cabin behind acoustic shielding, recording. I tried to rise. The command forced my head down. Lena knelt in front of me. "Let go when it opens." I finally understood her extra instruction. She had discovered that a synchronized group could occupy the survival path only until impact. To release the living, someone had to remain outside the shared position and carry the command through the crash. She had stood in the aisle deliberately. That was the cost of the 11 survivors. Lena concentrated 176 minds around one point, then kept their fatal impact inside herself so the chosen 11 could let go. Pell's activation was making her do it again, with us. The cabin fire axe hung beside door 2L. Reaching it meant crossing 6 feet against the command. I bit through my tongue, using pain to break synchronization, and crawled. Pell saw me move and increased power. Every seat belt tightened. My ribs cracked. The cabin tilted 30 degrees. The mountain filled the windows. Lena shouted, "Brace." I grabbed the axe and struck the speaker amplifier beneath her jump seat. The first blow released Ross. The second released 4 technicians. The third made the cabin transparent enough to see the real hangar. Pell ran toward the controls. The amplifier casing split, revealing a black composite block from the original aircraft. Voices pressed through it, 176 breaths shaped into one continuous order. Destroying it would end the replay and erase the only physical proof that Lena saved anyone. Preserving it would let Pell propagate the system. I had spent my career wanting evidence more than peace. Lena put her hand over mine. Open it. I drove the axe through the block. The mountain struck. Every reconstructed fragment leaped from its frame. Belts opened. Windows burst inward. A pressure wave crossed the hangar and stopped at the acoustic walls. For 1 second, 176 human outlines appeared in the dust, all crouched around row 17. Then they stood. The lights went out. Fire crews found 13 living people beneath wreckage. Pell died beside the control desk, his hands locked in a brace position. The power test destroyed most sensors and every original speaker. My copied files survived in a shielded evidence locker. The board's final report blamed pilot disorientation and listed the acoustic system as a survival factor and an unauthorized hazard. Lena received a posthumous commendation. The 11 survivors attended the ceremony. For almost a year, I believed breaking the block had released what remained of the cabin. Then the survivors began hearing her. Not in dreams. During emergencies. One heard Lena direct him out of an apartment fire. Another heard her before a bridge collision and ducked seconds early. A third abandoned a train 2 stations before it derailed. Each voice was followed by a 19 Hz vibration recorded on nearby devices. The command had left the wreckage with the people it saved. It spread when they warned others. The 11 tried staying apart. Distance made no difference. During a tornado warning, all of them crouched simultaneously in homes across 6 states and spoke the same seat numbers. Security cameras showed 11 separate rooms bending toward an aisle that was not there. Maren Holt stopped performing because the lowest note of her cello activated the response. She mailed me its C string in an evidence tube. When our laboratory plucked it behind acoustic glass, dust on the floor formed a narrow path to row 17's reconstructed coordinates. The survivors were not merely carrying Lena's warning. Together, they had become the missing amplifier. Airlines quietly licensed a revised compliance system from Pell's company. They claimed the dangerous frequency had been removed. During certification trials, passengers followed brace commands 17% faster. No documentation mentions Flight 582. I attended one test in Oklahoma City. The recording used a generic male voice. At the end, beneath the approved words, my instruments detected a second command too low for the room to hear. Let go when it opens. I resigned from the board. I spend my time locating aircraft with the new system and measuring their speakers. So far, 43 carry the frequency. The manufacturers will not ground them because no one has been injured. They misunderstand what Lena preserved. The command does not prevent impact. It decides where survival gathers and who remains outside it. Last month, a jet made an emergency landing in Virginia after smoke filled the cabin. Everyone survived except the aft flight attendant, who was found standing in the aisle. Her jump seat belt had been cut from the inside. The passengers said a woman named Lena moved them forward. Every brace command now ends in my sister's voice.